All right, this is lecture number 4 for World War II. Today we're going to talk about two groups of people, African Americans and Mexican Americans, and the ways that they were affected during the war. So first, racism on the home front as far as African Americans go. We're going to talk about African Americans first. Um, FDR issues Executive Order 8802, and this is set to integrate the workforce, basically making it so blacks and whites can work together in the workforce, and there's no segregation, so you'd have to have separate facilities to work, making it easier and making production quicker. Okay, it's a symbolic victory with very little accomplishment. There's not like this all of a sudden, oh, okay, now African Americans and white are equal. It's not like that. There's a pretty powerful quote here. It says, "There's no power in the world, not even in all the mechanized armies of the earth, allied and Axis, which can now force the Southern white people to the abandonment of the principle of social segregation." Just meaning that there's no way that the South is going to segregate or is going to desegregate itself. It's going to make sure that whites and blacks are separate no matter what. So when you have half the population or a large portion of your population that does not want this, it makes it hard for it to really accomplish much. So we have another migration. With 8802, there's more jobs for African Americans in the cities. So again, they're going to move from rural areas to the cities. African Americans are improving their economic condition with jobs and better jobs. They're making more money, meaning that they can kind of lift themselves up in society a little bit. And the fact that they are working and in the military during this World War II, it's really going to provide for this like backbone for the civil rights movement that's to come in the 50s and 60s. Because they're always proving that they are equal to whites, and that's kind of always been like the whites' agenda is that blacks are not as good as whites, and they can't do the same type of jobs. But now they're proving that they can do the same type of jobs. So when people try to say that, they can kind of shoot it down in the future. There's riots in Detroit. So as we know, blacks moved to the north, and that's supposed to be the safe haven for them. Detroit is a huge city, huge mechanized city where they're creating a lot of goods. So a lot of jobs are available there. But altercations between blacks and whites turn into full-scale riots. There's even a rumor that a baby of a black woman was thrown off a bridge, so there's riots break out. It lasts for 3 days. 34 are dead, 700 wounded. So it's a huge riot. There's $2 million worth of damage and 1 million man hours lost of production because all these people were fighting as opposed to going to work. And as we know, the propaganda says, don't waste a minute. We should be working at all times in order to defeat our enemies. We need to be working at home to provide goods. So it's obviously not a good thing. African Americans are blamed for the violence. They say it's their fault. And then, there's a powerful quote that says, "There ain't no North no more," meaning that, the North used to be the safe haven, but not anymore. There's no place that African Americans go to be safe. So the military breaks down its racial barriers. Okay, at first it kept everything segregated. So you had black units, you had white units, and they would go separately, but it didn't really make sense to do that. It wasn't logistical, so they started to break that down. Okay, the African Americans were barred entirely from Air Corps and the Marines, and the military leaders were eventually forced to make changes because it didn't make sense. It wasted manpower, and we have over 700,000 blacks in the military, and they need to be dispersed evenly to provide support. One of the most famous groups during the war is the Tuskegee Airmen. There's been a couple movies made about them. The Red Tails movie that a few years ago was made about the Tuskegee Airmen. It's the 99th Fighting Squadron. It's an all-black squadron originating out of the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama. And basically, whites said that blacks weren't smart enough to fly, and these people were set to prove these people wrong. They served mostly in North Africa and won many medals for their service. They became very, very popular, and even with whites, they became popular because they were known as like the most well-trained and most disciplined group, and they would escort bombers, and they would not break their lines or break their formation in order to go like hunting for other planes. They would stay together and protect the bombers, and they had some of the best protection rates of any squadrons out there. So the white bomber pilots began to eventually call for the Tuskegee Airmen to protect them. So it was pretty cool. All right, the next group is Mexican Americans, and Mexican Americans during the war. We have a second wave of migration to the cities, and that's from Mexican Americans. During the war, we need more labor. Okay, women are going to the workforce, men that aren't going to war are in the workforce, but we still need more. And so we institute something called the Bracero program. And it's where American and Mexican governments made an agreement to allow Mexican migrant workers in the U.S. for a period of time. Okay, over 300,000 Mexicans were in the military, but through the Bracero program, we have all these people coming together, or coming to America, and it's kind of like, this, period of time where they're allowed to work and make money, but their, work visas expire, but they stay. The people they're like mostly working in the farms, and the conditions in the farms are really, really bad. And people kind of start to equate it to being slavery because they're paid very little, because they're not American citizens, and then the conditions are really rough. So, a tough program, and it lasts for a really long time after the war. It continues because it's a source of cheap labor, and it's a kind of like a loophole that farmers could get through to get cheaper labor. If you look at one of those dumb laws apps, you'll see one where it says that zoot suits are illegal. It's like illegal to wear a zoot suit in California or in Los Angeles, and you kind of wonder, like, what's a zoot suit? Some of you guys may have seen them like at school dances. There's a big, colorful, bright, outfits. They have, long jackets, baggy pants, long watch chains, and hats. And these were suits that were worn by Mexican Americans in Los Angeles, and it kind of was a part of the gang culture. And the gangs were called pachucos, and if you remember these gangs, you wore these suits. And so this dumb law is on here because there was this huge set of riots that came out of people, the Mexican Americans who wore these zoot suits. And so in order to try to make these, riots, prevent them from happening again and later, they passed this law that says illegal to wear the zoot suit, because then people were targeted for wearing it. So we'll talk about what the zoot suit riots were here in a second. This is a picture of what a zoot suit may look like. Okay. So the zoot suit riots, basically law enforcement officers were permitted to search, detain Mexicans at will, and they could target them by if they were wearing a zoot suit. It was easy to spot. And the LA County Sheriff at the time, he talks about how Mexicans had a biological predisposition to criminal tendencies. So meaning that if you were Mexican, you were, it was innate in you. You were born with, the fact that you were probably going to commit crime. So obviously very racist. And you're looking at, another group of people that are going to be discriminated against here. So the zoot suit riots emerged out of the fact that there's an accidental death of a man named Jose Diaz, and it led to the arrest of 22 young Mexicans. Half of them are sentenced to life in prison on flimsy evidence. So the Mexican American culture is really upset about this. They think it's basically racism going on. So due to this, there's a 4-day riot that ensues in LA after a rumor circulates that a Mexican American man had beat an American serviceman. So white soldiers that were stationed in LA retaliate. So they go and they find anyone wearing zoot suits, and they start beating them, ripping them off, getting rid of their suits, as a way to retaliate for what happened. Okay, and the following days it spills out into the surrounding communities. So it's not just downtown LA, it emerges and goes all the way out through all the surrounding cities. So authorities did nothing to stop whites who were terrorizing Mexican Americans, but if they saw Mexican Americans doing something to whites, they would stop it. All right, and that's zoot suit riots, and that's it for today.